Good morning, everyone. Welcome back to our Thursday morning devotions. I'm John Paul Z, and this morning we're going to take a look at several different passages. I know last Thursday we looked at a passage in First Kings of how Solomon, his prayer to God, and how he acknowledged that God was the only one, that there's no one like him in what he has done in his faithfulness and his covenant love for us. Well, this week or today, we're going to take a look at another passage in Kings, but it's in Second Kings. But that's actually going to be our second passage for today. It's going to be used as an illustration. Our foundation passage today is actually found in Luke chapter 8. And we'll read it here in just a minute, but let me just give you a little bit of a background of what's going on. You know, do you ever experience those times when you're in God's Word or you're just spending time, you're reading through a passage or something, and questions pop up in your mind about certain things? Well, there were some questions that actually popped up uh, reading this story that we're going to look at. It's actually the story of Jesus and the disciples are in the boat. They're out on the lake. A storm comes up, and the boat starts to fill with water. And you may be very familiar with the story, but we're going to take a look at three specific things in that, and then we're going to look at other passages that talk about the same thing, and they all have the same message. And most of the time, when we read through things, and you'll see in this particular passage, um, how we are quick to respond from the flesh. And I don't mean that in a negative way or a sinful way. What I'm saying is, because we're human, we respond to certain stimuli because we're human, because we're flesh. Okay, we respond to things. And so um, we'll take a look at and see how the disciples responded in this situation and learn some things. But it all really all these references today that we're going to look at revolve around this one particular question, and that is, why are we afraid? Why are we afraid? And usually that fear is stimulated from a thought that we had about a situation that we're being confronted with. And so we're in this circumstance or we're in this situation, and then our mind automatically concludes or makes assumptions about certain things. And then once we get those thoughts in our mind, the feelings follow based on the thoughts that we originally came up with. And then that translate into our behavior, how we respond, how we react, and things like that. So I want to ask you the question, whatever the situation may be in your life, why are we afraid? Now, I know what some of you are going to say, and it's the exact same thing I said when I read this passage, when Jesus asked the disciples, why are you afraid? I'm going, what do you mean? Why are we afraid? Look at the situation. Look at the circumstance. Look at what's happening. Why wouldn't I be afraid? That is what I mean as the response of the flesh. Okay, it's the response of man, human, responding on our level, and we're taking the situation that we're in and we're making conclusions based on the world and the world that we live in. So let's take a look at the passage this morning, and we'll get in a little more detail about these things and how they apply to our lives. In Luke chapter 8, verses 22 through 25, and this same story is actually in Mark and also in Matthew. So I'm going to read the version from Luke chapter 8. It says, one day he got into a boat with his disciples, and he said to them, let us go across to the other side of the lake. So they set out, and as they sailed, he fell asleep. And a windstorm came down on the lake, and they were filling with water and were in danger. And they went and woke him, saying, Master, Master, do you not care that we are perishing? And he awoke, rebuked the wind and the raging waves, and they ceased, and there was a calm. And then Jesus said to them, Why are you afraid? Where is your faith? Now I want to stop right there in that passage and just kind of go through and look at three things, and then we're going to look at some other passages that tell us the exact same message. And it's so very, very important for us to get it, because our natural response in any circumstances that we may have, and I should maybe say any, there are some really great circumstances and we're excited, okay? But anything that we perceive as a threat to us, we automatically fear. That's just our natural response. We fear. And God, in this passage, is giving us the answer or the attitude or the transformed way of looking at things that come into our lives. And it makes a world of difference. So let's take a look at these three things. The first thing is okay, we're all aware of the situation, right? We're all aware of the situation that we're in. There's a storm going on, right? The first response or the reaction, let's put it that way. It's really a reaction of the disciples. And by the way, the disciples were professional fishermen. Okay, they've been out on the lake hundreds of times before, and they've been in storms before, and they knew how to handle all that. But this one was different. And the first reaction they have was what? What was the first thing? Well, in this passage, what was the first thing they did? They went to Jesus and they asked him this question. And I think this is the question that sets us up to make the conclusions that we make. And it's this: don't you care about us? Now, how about you? I know that the times in my life, there may be some circumstances and struggles and challenges that come into my life. And you know what? That very thought comes to my mind. God, do you really care? Now that's a reactive question, not a response that comes from faith, trust in God. And we're going to see how this develops. So I wanted you to see, first of all, that, their reaction to their situation was that Jesus didn't care, right? That he didn't care for them. Well, Jesus gets up, goes about his business, right? He gets up and he asks them two questions. Obviously, he calms the storm, but he asks them two key questions. One, why are you afraid? And two, where is your faith? Now, I don't know about you, but when I read this, and even when I read it today, it just seems to me like, of all the questions that Jesus could have asked them, why you're afraid wouldn't be one of them, because to me, it seems pretty obvious why they're afraid, right? They're in the middle of a storm, the boat's about to go down. That seems like a pretty good reason to be afraid. But then we have to stop and reflect. If that was such an obvious question, why would Jesus even ask it? Well, as we're going to see in other passages, the question that he asked isn't the question that we interpret it to be. He wasn't asking them, yes, he did, okay, he did use the words, why are you afraid? But there's a difference between why are you living in fear, why are you fearing, and what has caused fear to be present in your life. That's two different things. And see, I think we take that question, at least I did. When you read that, it's like, well, what's causing you to be afraid? He didn't ask that question. He wasn't asking. Jesus knew there was a storm. Jesus knew that men drown in boats that sink out in the middle of a lake. He knew all of that, but he wasn't asking what caused fear. And by the way, what we can another thing that we can grasp from this is that Jesus isn't minimizing emotions. He wasn't getting on them because they were afraid or because they had fear. Okay, and God wasn't minimizing the reality of the circumstance that they were in. He wasn't saying, "Oh, what's a storm? Oh, come on, the storm's anything. Just go back to bed." No, he wasn't doing that. God was real. They were in a real situation. It was a very dangerous situation. But his question wasn't, "What's causing your fear?" His question to them is, "Why are you allowing fear and the circumstance to have authority over you and rule your life?" That's the question. You see, totally different. And once I saw it that way, it's like, you know what? Things are going to happen, right? We're going to go through good times. We're going to go through bad times. We're going to go through traumatic times. We're going to go through times that emotionally we're drained and we're hurting. We're just going to go through some bad times. But Jesus isn't saying, "Oh, well, avoid the bad times or just suck it up, baby." You know, be a man, and he's not saying that at all. What he is saying is, hey, when those things come into our lives, don't let them have authority over you and don't let them rule in your life. See, he wasn't getting on to them because they became afraid. That's just a natural response. He was questioning, why are you allowing fear to control you to the point that you're questioning my care for you, that you're questioning my love for you? You see? So don't allow the circumstance to rule in our lives. So you can take this whole, well, okay, the other thing, that's the part about why we're being afraid. And then the next question, or the last question that he asked him was, where is your faith? In the other references in Mark and Matthew, he goes, "Oh, you of little faith." And if you look at that and study the Greek in there, it's basically the same thing as what's being said. He's not talking about a quantitative amount of faith. He is not implying that at all. He's not saying they had just a small amount of faith so they couldn't deal. No, that's not it. What he's asking is, what are you putting your faith in? Where where is your faith looking? Where is your faith anchored on? Where are you putting your faith? That's what he's asking here. And that's what he was saying in Mark and in Matthew. Okay? Because where are you putting your faith? And again, it goes back to what we've just said, is that they determined, and they may come to the conclusion, that the storm was in control and it had the power to do whatever it wanted to do to them, to the boat, and those in the boat. That's the conclusion they made. So their conclusion, their faith was that the circumstance is more powerful than God's presence. The circumstance and all that's going on is bigger than God can handle. Or maybe we ought to put it this way, okay? Because it just seems like, oh, well, okay, all I have to do is just look over here and it's sweet and better. No, we're in a circumstance where there's still fear, there's still emotions, there's still trauma, there's still hurt, there's pain, okay? It's all real. And God's not saying it's just going to all go away and be better. We have to go through it. But when he's saying, where is your faith? Instead of coming to the conclusion, well, I guess I hear it all the time. Um, when you try to share, like this situation here, they go, "Oh, but John, you just don't understand. Reality's reality." I mean, you just this stuff like this happens, man, and well, yeah, stuff does happen, but to the believer, and this is the point, one of the points that Jesus is trying to get across to them is this: yes, those things are real, but they do not have authority over you unless we give it to them. And no, just because it's a circumstance or a situation we find ourselves in, that's not the end all. It does not have the ultimate final say of how we're going to deal with it and the outcome or the impact or the victory that we're going to have in our life. It does not have the say unless we give it to it. That's what he's saying. Where is your faith? You see, it's not in, okay, well, I want to be in a boat someday and I want to just speak to the waves and boom, I want to perform a miracle. That's not the point either. It's not that we're performing miracles, it's that we're living in real life and things happen to us, but our rock, Jesus Christ, and our Father, they have the authority. They have the final say. They have the rule over all these things. And how they choose to bring us through it is up to them. But I am not going to throw in the towel and forfeit the race before we even get going. Right? So when he's asking where our faith is, he's asking you, are you going to believe that more than you believe me? Are you going to just trust the world and go, oh, well, that's just the way it happens. There's nothing you can do about it. Or you're going to trust me and let me guide you through this. What was the end result of the situation? If you read the other references in there, you'll see that other than the storm stopping, that they safely arrived at their destination. They safely arrived at their destination. See, that's the hope that we have. If we put our faith in God and say, God, listen, I'm afraid. This is scaring me. I'm overwhelmed. I don't know what to do. I don't know how to handle it, but I do know you do. And I don't know how you're going to choose to do that, but I know that you can help me deal with the emotions, deal with the situation, and I know that we're going to safely arrive at our destination. See, that's what he's saying here and asking us, why are you afraid? You should, not what's causing you to be afraid, and where is your faith? Are you allowing that to rule over your lives and dictate how you're going to feel and think and things you say, like God doesn't care, right? We say it all the time, don't we? When we're in a situation, God, do you really care? Are you really there? He understands those. He understands that our flesh is weak. But we ought to come to a point in our lives as we go through these verses and other verses, and as you have your personal time with God, come to the realization that, the circumstance doesn't dictate or doesn't, define God or me or my value or his covenant love. That doesn't affect our relationship. He's still the sovereign God over all things, and he'll do whatever he wants to do to bring him glory. But he wants us to stand and say, you know what? Yeah, I am afraid. Yeah, I am scared. Yes, I am hurting. Yes, I am overwhelmed. But you know what, God? I'm trusting you to walk with me through this. and I know that we're going to arrive where we need to be. That's the questions that he's asking here. So what other references can we look at this? I think one of my other favorite ones is in Second Kings about Elisha. It's one of my favorite stories, and it's exactly it's the exact. I say the exact. It's almost identical to the disciples in the boat. So let me read it to you. I believe this is the NIV version that I'm going to read, but it's in Second Kings chapter 6, and we're going to. Um, I think we're going to start in verse. I think 15. I should be wearing my glasses, but I'm not going to. But here's the story of Elisha, and I'm pretty sure you're going to be familiar with this story too. It says, when the servant of the man of God got up and went out early the next morning, an army with horses and chariots had surrounded the city. "Oh, my lord, what shall we do?" the servant asked. "Do not be afraid," the prophet answered. "Those who are with us are more than those who are with them." And Elisha prayed, "O Lord, open his eyes so he may see." Then the Lord opened the servant's eyes, and he looked, and he saw the hills full of horses and chariots of fire all around him. As the enemy came down toward him, Elisha prayed again to the Lord, "Strike these people with blindness." So he struck them with blindness, as Elisha had asked. And if you continue reading, you'll see where they led him away off into Samaria, and the situation was over. But did you pick up on how the similarities between the two stories? Okay, an army of thousands of soldiers came down to get Elisha. The servant gets up, goes out, getting ready to do his normal things for the day, and he sees this vast army approaching. And what is his reaction? "Oh my Lord, what shall we do?" Right? "Lord, don't you care?" See his reaction. What did Elisha do? Elisha got up, went out, looked at the exact same army. He was in the exact same situation that the servant was in, and he was calm and he was confident. And what was his response? "Do not be afraid." Okay. Now, see, another one of those statements. It's like, okay, 1,000 to 1. It doesn't seem very fair to me, right? See how our minds, you see how Satan gets our minds and it starts doing all this. Well, that's reality, man. No, it's not. The thoughts that go through our mind of doubt and questioning and stuff aren't, they're there for a reason. And sometimes they're there for a good reason. Okay. But he Elisha sees the exact same thing, and he doesn't get go into panic. He goes, okay, no problem. Hey, don't be afraid. Why? Because Elijah knew something. And in fact, this is one of the things that you and I need to know if we know God and trust Him with all our heart. They who are with us are greater than those who are with them. Does that bring a Bible verse to your mind? What does Jesus say? And I think I have the reference here. If we do, I'll give it to you. But doesn't Jesus in the New Testament say, you know, don't let your heart be troubled? You believe in God, believe also in me. And then he goes on to say that why? Well, why not let my heart be troubled? Because he who is in you is greater than he who is in the world. You see, we read that verse, but we relinquish that authority and rule, and we give it to the circumstance, going, "Oh well, that's just the way things are in the world." No, it's not. Now, please don't get the assumption or come to the conclusion that, well, hey, you know, I got it all down and this is easy for me. It's not. No, it's not. Do I still come into situations where I'm going, God, do you care? Yes, I do. But I realize I stop and I take my thoughts captive. I stop and I'm going, okay, whoa, 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 whoa. Satan, you're not in control here. Situation, you are not in control here. The Bible says that God is in control of my life. God, you're in control. I'm not going to allow this to make me think things I shouldn't think, say things I shouldn't say, and feel things I shouldn't feel. You're in control. You see, I still go through those times, but we take back the authority and the control that God has given to us. So Elijah tells them, "Don't be afraid. He who is with us is greater than those who are with them." And then he asks God this. God, open his eyes so he can see. What did he see? All the horses and chariots around that were protecting them. See, Elisha just knew that. Why did he know that? Well, maybe it's because he read the Old Testament scrolls that talk about God's protection with us. Maybe he read David's account of some of his Psalms of how the Lord protects. And again, here we are, we're in one of those situations where, well, yeah, okay, that was Elijah and that's what God did for Elijah, but you know, we live in a modern age and there aren't angels and everything, around us. Well, if you think that, you're wrong. Because over in the book of Psalms, it says, and let me see if I wrote it. I think it's Psalm 34. I don't think I wrote it down. I think it's Psalm 34. You can look it up. David is saying that the angels of the Lord encamp around those who fear him, who trust in the Lord. See, David is opening our eyes and telling us, just like Elisha knew, hey, Elisha goes, hey, the angels of the Lord are encamped around about us to protect us, to those who fear and trust in the Lord. So, yes, we do have that same protective band of angels around us. So it's true for us today too. We have that protection in our lives. And then also notice in this verse, just like Jesus got up, spoke to the situation was over, and they arrived at their location. Elisha once again goes to God and asks God to handle the situation. And God does. That should be our response. That's the model that he wants us to follow. Why are you afraid? Where is your faith? I have to ask those questions all the time. John, why are you afraid? Why are you allowing this situation to do that? I'm not going to. Okay. Well, where's your faith? My faith is in God. He says he loves me. He says his angels are around about me. He says he cares for me, cast all my care on him because he cares about me. That God is sovereign, and he's the almighty God, King, Creator. He has the ultimate power and authority over all things, and I will trust him and follow him through this circumstance in my life. knowing that I will arrive safely where I need to be. Let's close with this psalm. Let me just read this to you, because there still might be some of you out there that go, well, yeah, I'm not so sure, if God's presence is really that near to us or available to us. It's available to all those who put their trust in him. Elisha could have chose to deal with that situation differently. The outcome would have been totally different. But he had confidence in God. He had confidence in God's word. He had confidence in the promises that God made, that God would protect him and would be with him. Did he control the events that happened? No. God controlled, how he's going to walk us through it and what's going to happen and what's not going to happen, how he's going to heal us. And God's going to do all that. But we need to stick with him. But let me just close with this psalm. It's Psalm 121. And may this be your word of encouragement in answering the questions. Where is your faith? Excuse me. And why are you afraid? I lift up my eyes to the mountains and ask, where does my help come from? My help comes from the Lord, the maker of heaven and earth. He will not let your foot slip. He who watches over you will not slumber. Indeed, he who watches over Israel will neither slumber nor sleep. The Lord watches over you. The Lord is your shade at your right hand. The sun will not harm you by day, nor the moon by night. The Lord will keep you from all harm. He will watch over your life. The Lord will watch over your coming, going, both now and forevermore. And that's true for you. When we find ourselves questioning, why am I afraid? Remember, it's not asking what's causing us to fear. It's asking us to choose who's going to have the authority and what we're going to allow to rule our lives. And our help comes from the Lord. Believe God, because he has never failed, and he will never fail you. Thanks for being with us. I hope this was a blessing to you, and we'll look forward to getting back together with you next week. If you remember, subscribe to our channel, Transform to Live. We have videos coming out every Sunday, and then, of course, our devotion every Thursday morning. I'd love to hear from you. What were your thoughts? What were the challenges that you saw? And share your insights with me. It'd be an encouragement to me. Be glad to hear from you. You all have a great day. And again, remember, God is faithful. He loves you. He protects you. Yes, there are angels camped around us. And remember, give God the ultimate authority and role in our lives. Don't let circumstances destroy you. God bless you.